Welcome to Tech About Town, brought to you by Communitech. My name is Alex Kinsella.
And I'm Sasha Bell.
And welcome to the first episode of this podcast.
Wow.
I know, number one.
We did it.
The funny thing is we're recording this is our third episode we're recording, but it's the first one that's going to air. So we're playing a little bit of a mental time travel with this.
Time is a flat circle.
Yeah. Well, it's a construct as well.
Well, the good thing about airing the third thing that we've recorded first is that we're in the groove now. We're loose.
Yeah. And it's funny because I feel like the third one is better than the first one we did.
I think you and I are better at being podcasters.
The first guest was quite good.
The first guest.
You'll hear later. And then the second one was like, as the kids say, it was good. I was going to say mid, but I shouldn't say that.
Now we're on a roll.
Yeah, now I feel like we're on a roll. So with that, what's the theme of this episode, which is kind of funny, is kind of like, what does Communitech do?
Yeah, so I can give the groundwork.
Well, before you do that, though,
okay.
I was going to say, like, what does this podcast do?
Oh, yes.
Right. It's 2024. Why a podcast?
Why throw a podcast in the never-ending sea of podcast content out there?
So the way this was pitched to me is I produce podcasts for some clients, and their Communitech came, and Alison P was like, "Hey, like, we'd like to do a podcast. What would you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I think it'd be cool if we did one that was a little bit not good cop, bad cop, but a little inside outside baseball on this, right?" So you work here full time.
I do.
I contract here, and I have worked here in the past, but I'm out and about running around town doing stuff.
You are the Waterloo Region human Rolodex. I have yet to meet a human in Waterloo Region that doesn't know you personally. You're a man about town.
I get around in a good way. So yeah, with that,
professionally,
I said, hey, professionally. And I said it'd be a good idea if we could do that, and it wouldn't be totally a promotional vehicle. It'd be a way to kind of ask some.
No, I think this is like, okay. So
deeper probing questions.
Totally. So I work at Communitech. I've been here for 5 years on the marketing team. And the thing that I find so rewarding working here is talking to our founders and talking to these tech entrepreneurs that our programs support and serve. And it sounds really cheesy, but hearing their stories is so inspiring and so amazing. And I get a big kick out of, I'm very extroverted, but I get a really big kick out of talking to people that I've never really met before, just about like what they're passionate about or what authentically drives them or what big problems they're trying to solve. I think that stuff is so interesting. And I'm a huge consumer of podcasts. I don't listen to music in the car. I only listen to podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts daily since before Spotify was a product, probably since like last time I lived in Toronto, it was like 2012. And I used to take the bus and listen to This American Life, which was like the first podcast kind of that really, I feel like, broke through to me. So I feel when I heard that you are producing a podcast for us and we are, I'd say, friends. Yeah. Friends, question mark?
Yeah.
I'll allow it. I said out loud, I want to co-host this before I overthink it, before I give myself time to overthink and talk myself out of it. I've always wanted to host a podcast. I'm such a huge fan of the medium. I want to do this. So here we are.
And here we are. And we're going to do this today. So we have two interesting guests at the same time. So Communitech has recently announced a new 3-year strategy that's replacing the previous 3-year strategies. It happens. Now, as we talked about a little bit before, I've been a member here and I've worked here and I freelance here. I've seen a lot of strategies come and go.
Yeah.
I think that's important, right? Because nothing's set in stone, right? You come up with a plan, you try it. I mean, that's what a startup does, right? You come up with something, you try it.
Totally.
You iterate, come out with something else.
Yes. So Communitech is a innovation hub based in Waterloo Region, Canada. We help founders start, grow, and succeed. We've been around since 1997, which is over 26 years, and we help primarily with capital, getting funds, talent, building the best teams, access to markets and community. Community is what we're probably best known for, throwing big fun parties. So we have Joel Semeniuk, who is our Chief Strategy Officer, and Alison Vreeswyk, who's our SVP of Marketing and Business Development, joining us today. So back to I like talking to people I've never met before. I actually work with these people every day. So
that's okay. I've actually, this will be the longest I'll talk to Joel for, since
he's a very thoughtful individual, I'd say. I like working with Joel.
Well, let's get them in.
Okay. Welcome, Alison Vreeswyk, SVP of Marketing and BD. Did I get that right?
I think so. I think that's what I do.
Joel Semeniuk, CSO, which stands for Chief Strategy Officer of Communitech. Thank you for being our very first guest on our very first episode of our Communitech podcast, Tech About Town.
Yay.
Yay. Thanks for having us.
So we've brought you here just to lay the groundwork about Communitech and what it does and what it has done for the last 26 plus years and what the new strategy is going forward. We want to pick your brains. So we got some questions. You're in the hot seat.
We've got questions. You've got answers, hopefully. Well, I was thinking about this when we were putting together the show notes. Everyone in this room, in the podcast studio, in the hub, started at different times at Communitech.
Oh,
right? So
when did you start, Joel?
2020, January.
Oh, just after me.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
started in September 2019.
Perfect.
Haha.
but you're pre-pandemic. You're pre-pandemic too.
Yeah.
By 2 months.
By 2
By a
months.
hair.
You're pre-pandemic. You were here.
Yeah.
You're 2020.
3?
No. 22.
Sure. Sounds right. Post-pandemic.
No,
No.
wait, no, because
No,
Cameron was
2023.
born 22 and you're
23.
summer 2023.
I think Feb. Yeah.
Oh, so you're
February.
Oh, February.
I'm newish. I'm new.
And then I started, depending on when you count the start date. So I was a member here from 2010.
You're an OG.
I worked here, and then now I'm a contractor here. So
Did-
I've seen some strategies.
You've seen
All the
some things.
I've seen multiple, and that's the thing that got me excited about this conversation, which is you both started before the last strategy, the True North strategy that was announced at
Yeah.
the AGM in 2021.
Yep.
Sure. Okay, got it. And then you came in after that strategy, kind of towards the end of that one. And so, like, looking at those perspectives and seeing the evolution of Communitech, we've all known about Communitech before we worked here. What goes into looking at a past strategy and then figuring out what went wrong, what went right, and then what you keep doing and change?
It's a great question. I kind of think back to some of the beginnings of the workshops that we started going through when we were developing the strategy. And honestly, we didn't really look at what's going right or what's going wrong. We were looking at the future. We're like, what's different now? What, compared to what we had assumed was correct when we created the first round of the True North strategy. And like everything changed. We were in the middle of the pandemic when we released the True North strategy, and things were different. Like capital was hopping and talent was hopping, and things were completely different. And then so we stopped and we said, okay, what's different now? Well, capital's changed, the talent market's changed, the world has changed. We're kind of going back to this different workplace model. The needs of our founders have changed, and so we're really looking at the future. Like, what do we need to kind of set ourselves up for going forward? And then more importantly, what have we heard along the way in terms of how we iterate not only the strategy itself, but how we message the strategy? And that was really something that we took really to our core. But as we were unraveling that, we really kind of, like, what's our motivation? Like, what's our core? Like, what is our superpower is really wanted to get down to. And we spent a lot of time thinking about that because we can do a lot of things as an organization. But what we're trying to figure out is like, what are the cluster of things that we should be doing and we actually are going to be really good at doing, because that's going to be the thing that determines how we move forward. And that makes sense. It's a really complicated model because we have a lot of funding from a whole bunch of different funding departments that are tied to programs that aren't going to change as our strategy changes, right? We have committed to a lot of these programs that that have long-term commitments and metrics around it. So really, our strategy was going to be around how do we fit that into our day-to-day model, and more importantly, like what are we going to be focusing on over the next 3 years? What are we not going to do compared to what we are going to do? And we had many workshops and many conversations to kind of get at that nucleus, but it was really forward-focusing more than anything else.
So just like, how are you going to spend, where are we going to put the energy and with what our organization does?
We've only got so much oxygen, right? And so it's better to put that oxygen in where we're really great at. One of the first interview questions when we're interviewing, and Ali will probably smile, my first question to anybody that interview is like, what's your superpower? Because everybody, when they're doing the thing that their superpower is,
they don't realize they're doing it,
and it's easy, and they're 10x, like they're so good at it, and it's almost seamless to them. Versus when they're doing their kryptonite, it's really hard, and it's a drag on the organization. So what was our superpower?
Right.
And we kept on coming back to this one concept, and we seemed to be good at connecting people on purpose, convening, whether or not it be events or breakfasts or programs, and then not just leaving it at that, but turning it into something. How do we catalyze those opportunities, those collisions with one another into things that turn into outcomes for our founders? And so we came back to our connect, convene, and catalyze mantra. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And we can look at all of our programs in that light. Oh, look at that. When we're doing Fierce Founders, it's actually about connecting and convening and catalyzing. Whenever we're doing Fast Tracks, it's actually about connecting, convening, and catalyzing. Whenever we're doing our events and our breakfast series, it's actually about that as well. Mm-hmm. So that kind of became our lens that we saw what we do and how we did it, and the superpower that we need to focus on. And so anything that's kind of outside that lens, like consulting, for example, does that fit in connect, convene, and catalyze? Well, no, maybe that doesn't, we should stay away from that kind of stuff and really focus on what we're really, really good at doing.
Yeah, like what comes naturally.
Yep.
The bringing people together thing is interesting to me, because that's always my experience with Communitech. Whatever role I had was going to a breakfast series event, going to Hub Unplugged, and just meeting with people. But as events have started, like the breakfast came back last summer. I should know these dates.
September,
fall. They came back in the fall.
They're back. Breakfast are back. You had the open house in May. There's a bunch of things that I know that are coming back that we can't talk about yet, but event-wise.
We can talk about it.
We can talk about it.
Tech Jam's coming back?
Tech Jam's coming back.
November 13th, 2024, baby.
Is the bubble tea bar going to be there?
Well,
should I talk to Victoria?
You should talk to Victoria
about bubble tea bar.
I did tell her about the bubble tea, but
I love bubble tea.
Yeah, bubble tea is a sleeper hit. People love
the sweet,
bubble
they don't
tea.
sponsor this show, but I'll tell you right now, Sweet Dreams Bubble Tea Bar.
Where is it?
Well, they bring it to you. They bring it to the event. But
No,
Sweet
I mean-
Dreams is on in University Plaza.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I'm trying to
Anyway, events are coming back.
Big time.
But that kind of takes us into space, right? And so we have this space here, the Tannery Event Center. God rest his soul, is no longer here for that. Where do we bring people together, though, outside of the hub, or within the hub and then outside the hub, right? Because space is kind of a weird thing right now.
I can take that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I'm not being interviewed, but
can do it.
events sort of lives in my world. So I always I've been thinking a lot about Communitech, and I always think about it as a clubhouse, which is like why I'm not trying to toot anyone's horn in this room, but I really like my job. And I think it's because I feel like I work at like a clubhouse for grownups. And there are so many different types of events, and some of them make sense for them to be here, but then other events don't, because the scale, we want to invite a lot of people, and there's limits to how many. This is a huge 80 or 100 square foot facility, but we don't have free range of the entire building. So some things like Tech Jam makes sense to go to a conference center, or some things we just want the vibes to be different. Like we want an after party to be at Sugar Run, or we want a dinner event to be at the Walper Hotel. Like it just kind of depends on the audience and the brand and what the facility can offer. But I think that we would love to have an external event space that we could kind of call on when we want. And I'm sure that Vreeswyk over here is nodding, but I think that we're going to be thinking about it and seeing how we can figure it out.
Well, and that kind of the other thing that I found out recently was super interesting is the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not the actual kitchen on the second floor, but instead a group of youth.
So students and postgrads. I think the two students running it, they're from UW and University of Toronto, and they're creating a drop-in. If you're just working on some ideas or need a place to just connect with other students or postgrads working on cooking up some ideas, come to the Communitech Hub this summer, and you can work in Area 151 and connect. And that's a bit of the connecting and convening and catalyze, but that's a program specifically for students, which our membership model doesn't really include.
Well, I like the idea of bringing potentially, new founders into the space, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, in the middle of all that is storytelling, right? Which is the key enabler, in my opinion, for being a founder. A lot of the founders that I've talked to and coached, and I'm a recovering founder myself. Well, it's always about those stories that enable the art of the possible. And when you hear and see and different people's stories, which is really at the heart of convening, right? If you're going to come and you're going to sit and you're all going to face, one way, listening to a speaker and then leave, I don't know, like there's some interest in that, but you can kind of get that from a webinar, sitting at home, drinking a glass of wine. It's really the way that you convene and the way that the stories are told in the middle to really create that energy and that not only that inspiration, but that, hey, we need to connect again after this. There's something more beyond this. There's something that we need to kind of follow up on. And that's really, I think, some of the magic that we're trying to bring to things like that, which is not just, creating events, but creating meaningful, curated events where people, come together over a particular cause. And they don't have to be here, as you're saying, they could be in other places. And sometimes, guess what? Like sometimes it's just good to get together and have fun too, right? So, and that has resonance. It's like, remember that time? Yeah, maybe we should do business one day too soon, right?
It speaks to Sasha's Clubhouse, right? Everyone can be here regardless of what stage they're at, but it can also be somewhere else. It doesn't need to be here. We can be at different venues as long as we're all together.
Well, the next question.
This is a spicy question.
Well, it's spicy-ish, which is around one of the criticisms of the True North strategy was, why is Communitech talking about a startup in Vancouver or Calgary? Mm-hmm. And the new strategy seems to refocus on Waterloo Region. Is there what's kind of the thought behind that? Like, how did you kind of get to there?
Yeah, you know what? We've had so many discussions around that too. And, first and foremost, we wanted to make sure that everyone, knew, including ourselves, that our roots, our trunk meets the soil here. And this is where our nutrients come from as an organization, and this is where we're housed and where we're going to stay. We also believe that a strong Waterloo is a strong province of Ontario and a strong Canada. Like, we know that we have a special place within Canadian innovation. And what was really inspiring to me when I talked to a lot of other hubs across Canada is that we also played this really interesting role across Canada as being kind of this model that people were like, hey, they got this cool place and they're doing some really innovative programming and they're doing it in an interesting way. So we knew that we had a role to play, not just in terms of being a really great regional innovation center, but something that could be modeled across the board. And one of the things that we struggled with is in terms of like, how do we find founders wherever they are and support them? Obviously, we have a commitment. We are funded to provide regional and provincial support. But there's also an opportunity to bring more energy back into the province and to the region by reaching broad and kind of really making this the focal point for their experience. So, if you look at our strategy, we do tier it across, a regional perspective and making sure that this is where we live and this is where our biggest focus is. And honestly, if you're a founder in the region, you're going to get the most value from Communitech because you can come to our events, you can come to our breakfast, you can experience the Communitech experience firsthand. I fell in love with Communitech after I came here, not after I heard about it, right? It was this abstract concept. Is when I was coming here, it's like, I love this place. I love the energy here, and I love the ecosystem that this organization represents. But then we also have a special place at the province level. We are one of 3 big provincial hubs, and we're being looked to say, hey, can you act more like a hub? Can you participate on purpose providing, a mindset of 1 + 1 + 1 = 4. Like, is there a way that we can think more in terms of just about our region, but more across the province, how we can do things at a bigger level? And that same concept is really scaled across the nation. So, we recognize, I think it was, how old is CTN? When did Dr. Tour create it? It's like,
I should know this, but I don't.
14, 15
Alex,
years ago.
do you know this?
Oh,
Look, it used to be
older
called
than that.
Digital
CDM,
Media.
Yeah, CDMN is
CDMN,
like, it probably goes back to like 2011, I think.
Wow.
2010, 2011.
I'm going to trust you on that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Our local historian says 2011.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with it. It's on the door. It still says like Canadian Digital Media Network, like in the vinyl on the door, and they never changed it. So that door's 2011.
All right.
That's
true. Yeah. Okay. Well,
if the old door says it, it's got to be true. But yeah, it goes back.
So to your point, Joel, like we've always been part of a national network.
Yeah.
There's 26 or 28 different versions of Communitech across the country, and we've always been. Part of our role has been connecting and networking within and working collectively and advocating for us, but also advocating for others. Understanding that every innovation hub across the country knows their region best and knows their founders best and knows what's best for them. But we've always been, where I sit, I always felt that we were a bit of like a trailblazer in that regard. And to your point, when I lived in Seattle, I grew up in Toronto. And when I lived in Seattle, I had never been to KW before I moved here.
Oh, wow.
I thought I was moving to the country. And my husband was like, no, there's this light rail. Like it's a bustling urban center. And I was like, okay. Anywho, but I knew Kitchener-Waterloo as a tech hub. And my husband and I both worked in tech, and we knew that we would be able to build a great life here. And then when I moved here and started working here, I realized that the reason I thought that was because of the work that was being done at Communitech, just building up the reputation of this region as a tech leader.
Yeah. And calling out all of the amazing work that the founders have been doing, right? Like
Absolutely.
They've been doing that. We've been doing it for years, whether it be news stories, blogs, whatever, supporting these amazing founders within the community and sharing their stories.
And it was beyond Canada, like you were saying. Like I first heard of Communitech in England, and
really?
I was speaking at an event and with an organization called Whitespace, and they're like, "Oh, Joel, do you know Communitech?" I'm like, "No."
Is that like you're from Calgary? Do you know Bob?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's like, I need to Google these people. But apparently Communitech had done a roadshow and it was well known for representing the talent from this ecosystem. And so it was not just a Canadian thing. It was people who was respecting this community worldwide.
That's awesome.
I remember the roadshow. I have photos of it.
Before my time.
For all of our time.
Yeah. No, it's in, but I mean, that kind of takes it back to something where the awareness of Waterloo Region, the awareness of Canadian tech in general, but Waterloo Region tech, it's kind of like a lot of changes have happened over the last 5 years in terms of companies. Do you think the lack of like concrete office space for companies kind of changes how the community thinks about the companies that are here? Like I think of, 2016 to 2020, you had like, Vidyard on a building, and you had Igloo on a building, and Shopify on a building, and Fair on a building. And a lot of them have given up their space and gone to different models, right? Work from home, remote work, hybrid, satellite centers, and those kind of things. Do you see that impacting the way the community kind of catalyzes and comes together? Because to me, it does a little bit, right? Because I had coffee with someone this morning who's lived here for 2 years. But works remotely for a company in Toronto. And I was like talking about some of the things going on in town, and they just don't know because they work from home. And it's
that's why they should sign up for the TLWR newsletter.
They really should.
Shout out.
I don't disagree. I think it has changed things a fair bit.
Yeah. Because I get like, it's almost like, not that I'm ignorant about it, but like even like you and I were talking about Sweet Dreams, and I'm like, over here, like where? And I'm like,
well, I am directionally challenged, and even
I'm directionally challenged.
I am. I truly am. But
listen, I still use like Google or Maps to find my way to the diamonds for my kids' softball, and they've been playing for like 4 years.
That is very sad.
I'm like, Queen Elizabeth, where the hell is that school?
I think, I'm a unique case. Well, I moved here and I was living here for about 6 months and did a good amount of exploring. And then it was COVID, and then I had a baby. And so my days of exploring were kind of over, and I'm sort of only getting back into it. But
I wasn't trying to call you out.
No, I know. It's fine. I don't take offense. I think kind of going back, I'm answering your question, Joel. Is that okay?
Yep.
I almost think that's why it's more important. Like there's been Vreeswyk is nodding. I'm sorry, Allie.
You're reading my brain. It's fine.
I
Keep
know.
going. Go.
I got to give you the platform to say your piece, but I think that's almost why it's so important that we're bringing events back. And there's been so much hunger for it. People the feedback that we get running events is like, I really enjoyed this. I need this space to connect, especially for those people who are working remotely and distributed.
It's hard to get everybody in a room these days. And even if you have a remote policy you need to be in, it's just not that easy, and companies are struggling. But if we can provide that space to give the peer-to-peers, the different networking opportunities, run different programming, and have people come together, we are more than happy to do it. Yeah, that's our job.
That's kind of like what you said, which is, you need not just putting 30 people in front of a speaker. You need new ways to bring people together that actually brings value.
At the end of the day, people love to engage with people. And without screens. I mean, sure, you can use screens for follow-up, but you build relationships as humans. And we've been doing that forever, sitting around fires and sharing stories and talking about the future and dreaming a little bit. And those are profound, right? And so we need to create those on purpose because they're not happening accidentally anymore. That being said, I still think that the ecosystem broadly is trying to figure out what that balancing act is. One of my companies that I worked with and we grew very large became global very quickly. We had 7 offices around the world. And it was, our default mode was digital and remote because, we had people in Silicon Valley and Bulgaria and London and Sydney, Australia. But we all came together a few times a year and had, in Bulgaria and had an amazing time. And I spent most of my time on the road breaking bread with people, building relationships, having lunches and dinners, and having fun as human beings. And that's where those bonds get created. And those relationships are non-trivial. When you're thinking about creativity, when you're thinking about how might we, those relationships, once you've built them in that personal connective space, are a type of capital that you are investing in that will kind of pay off in magnitudes in the future. And honestly, right now we can only do that, as humans in a physical space.
Well, I don't have a segue for this one either, but I'm going to ask you another spicy question.
I'm happy I'm on this side of the table.
It's good. No, you can answer it too. I mean, the City of Kitchener recently announced $500,000 in funding, followed by some subsequent funding that's going to come through. What's that for?
For us being who we are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to be fair, like City of Kitchener has invested in Communitech for as long as I can remember, right? Always something. What is kind of what's the money going to be used for? I think is the one question. And then the second question is, downtown's obviously like it's changed a lot. Like there's a lot more people living down here, but there's a lot less people working down here. Do you see, this investment from the city kind of helping with that or trying to change that?
There's certainly an association between, creating a vibrancy downtown and the impact it has on downtown business, downtown real estate, and so forth, right? Where the money is going to be used is to help kind of really seed that a little bit more. So you're going to see a lot of effort into more earlier stage work. We need more startups that are thinking about forming a business here in Kitchener and staying here in Kitchener as they're growing. If we catch them early, we have a better chance of keeping them here as they grow and as they start using space and start using the resources of the downtown area. But they're also reinforcing some of the things that they value as an organization as well. For example, our Fierce Founders program. It's a very important program for us to promote diversity and inclusion in this ecosystem, especially in the startup ecosystem, which is predominantly male, right?
Can I just pause you and explain what Fierce Founders is?
Sure.
For people who don't know. Fierce Founders is a suite of programs that Communitech offers that is specifically for women and non-binary entrepreneurs, and we offer different programming depending on what stage of their business is, including but not limited to non-matching capital funds.
Yep. And without City of Kitchener, a lot of that programming wouldn't be able to continue. And it's incredible that we get to continue to support those founders.
Yeah, we love Fierce Founders program. I was at the market the other day and I saw a woman wearing a Fierce Founders hoodie. And I was like, oh, cool.
Love that. Love that.
Did you design that?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry. Grace designed it.
Oh, Grace designed it.
Yeah.
There's new hoodies?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
They're black when they say Fierce Founders down the sleeve. Very cool.
Oh, I haven't seen it. Okay.
We also do an annual reunion now at Investor House, which is going to be happening in October too. So we get all of those amazing founders back together to tell those stories and talk and connect all over again.
Right.
Well, it's also amazing, like every event that we have here, almost every, Mayor Barry's here.
Yes.
Yeah,
You know,
I've
and
met
he's
that
such a
guy
contributor.
1,000 times.
Yeah,
Should get
and
him a
he's
shirt.
so involved, and he's, and I think that's really just a testament to the recognition that, our ability to be a gravity well for founders, for their start, and to be a big part of their journey, and Kitchener-Waterloo being that, the place where that happens is a really important part of that. In fact, I was having a conversation with the mayor of Winnipeg months ago, and I said, you need to call Mayor Barry. And because there's not the same recognition that I've seen in other cities and other provinces across Canada. So it's a very unique place here.
Yeah. This is the first place I've ever lived where I've met my mayor multiple times, my MP multiple times, my MPP. Like, I just feel that has never been my experience.
Because
I lived in Toronto for 26 years and I never had that experience.
Yeah, I know it's the same thing, but I just thought it was like a Canadian thing.
It's not common.
No.
Oh.
No.
No.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a mindset difference here in this community. And I don't, I was having dinner at Seoul the other night, which is, by the way, the answer to a question I hopefully answer me. And someone was talking, it's like, what's different about here? And I said, you know what? I was told that it was a barn building ecosystem. And barn building comes from, if you see your neighbor building a barn, you just chip in, you help. And if you see your other neighbor building a barn, you chip in, you help. Because one day you're going to build a barn and you want them to chip in and help. So we're all helping one another out. There was never like, no, I'm going to build my barn and they're build their barn. And, there's different metaphors that span that. But I see that here. There's this want for ecosystem success. We want everybody to be successful here. And I think, COVID may have put a little bit of a ripple in that, but fundamentally, all the signs that we're getting, and by the way, this is why we've been talking so much about ecosystem in our strategy, is because it's actually about the ecosystem, right? It's not about one person or one organization in this ecosystem that's going to be, cause the success of a founder. It really is all of the nutrients in the soil that we're planting this founder in that's helping them out. So when we think about our potential here really is to figure out how we can work together as an ecosystem to create the most value for our founders and letting them kind of be all that they can be.
So Communitech puts our energy into making this a great place to live and work and build a company, and that in turn helps the economic prosperity of the region.
Yeah, we're thinking very holistically. And of course, we have amazing programs specific for founders, but we've been involved with, conversations all the time with the region and the mayors to talk about meta issues, housing, healthcare, so forth.
That kind of leads to this question then. So what, and whether it is an industry related thing, a technology related thing, healthcare, whatever, what do you think the biggest risk to founder success in Waterloo Region is today, and how do we help solve that?
What's the biggest risk?
Yeah.
That is a
That's
right. Because to me, if you ask me, hey, Alex, what's the biggest risk? I would say it's infrastructure, right? We don't have the housing to support 1 million people. We don't have transit to support 1 million people. We don't have a hospital to support 1 million people. So that to me is like, that's the core one. If you're going to move a family here or start a family here, or just move here by yourself and start a company, there's some risks there with that, right?
I totally agree. I just think back to, the hundreds of conversations I've had with founders, and that's never come up. I find that really interesting. And where I see a lot of founders agonizing is like, how do I reach my potential from here, right? And I think they're concerned about a couple of things, like, will I be able to grow from this region? How can I tap into remote markets? How do I find the talent to grow here? And if not, where else might I grow from? And underpinning all of that is perhaps some of those stories I was telling you about, is that sometimes they don't recognize that there are interesting different paths that different founders have taken in the region to remain here. We celebrate some of the stories of the founders who had every opportunity to leave this region and go to Silicon Valley or to some other place, and they chose to stay here for many reasons. And just telling those stories, I think, and then tell about the journey that those founders have been on, I think has been like the fundamental aha moments that I have heard, going, knowing that these founders had the opportunity to leave and didn't is super interesting. That means I don't have to here. That means I can build a global multi-million-dollar business from this region, and yeah, there's going to be concerns with, cost of living, infrastructure, and so forth. But fundamentally, I think the founders do want to remain here. They love it in the region. They want to participate and give back, but they also want to know that they can versus, if I really want to grow my business, I have to go to New York or Boston, Silicon Valley, or somewhere else.
And I think, to play, I don't want to say devil's advocate, but whatever, I just said it.
I have the beep feature.
I think Silicon Valley, if we talk about healthcare, housing, and travel, they deal with the same thing. Like, there is no I shouldn't say this because I've never lived there, but it's my understanding that Silicon Valley and a lot of the sort of hubs outside of San Francisco really struggle with public transit. Like, it's a car world. And I mean, healthcare in the US, we won't talk about it, but I feel like we can just leave it at that. So I think these are things that almost every region has to cope with. And I think Toronto, the reason I can't afford to live in Toronto, I don't want the price tag of Toronto. I grew up there. I know exactly what it would be like to live there. I think transit in Toronto is great. People that complain about the TTC have never lived somewhere else because it is great compared to the other places I've lived.
I actually had to look at someone that has asked me about the public transit where I grew up, and I'm like, I don't think we had buses. And then my mom was like, are you stupid? Like, we had a whole public transit system. I'm like, I never used it.
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed. It was so obsolete.
It did not.
Yeah, so I think to sort of defend the issues of Waterloo Region, I think we're trying our best.
I think so. And it's a good sense of community as well. Like, we were just talking about how, we do see our mayors out there. Like, it's different in a sense. Like, they truly care and are trying to make a difference. And it's great partnerships with the city of Kitchener and trying to change things and move things in a positive direction. So I don't disagree with any of the issues you said, Alex, or you, Joel, but I think we're moving forward in a really great way.
I like it. Okay.
Yeah. Listeners can leave us a comment. They think we're out of our mind and out of touch. Please.
So just kind of tying things back up as we get ready to do our rapid fire questions. When we're looking at the new strategies, so strategies out there, living and breathing, are you looking for, you've done interviews and workshops. Are you looking for feedback on it?
Always. Yeah. Why? It was started with feedback, and we can only continue. In fact, we agonized over so many words, and we know we've got some words wrong, and we know that there might be some areas that people might read and go, hey, that doesn't make sense. And that's perfectly fine. Let us know. Mm-hmm. We will absolutely work that into address. And I think that really it's kind of litmus testing that all the time and being brave to say, hey, there's a problem. What's really cool is that we have had some really great, honest feedback on it early and often to the point where it's like, wow, that was almost kind of harsh, but I totally get where you're coming from with that. And we're gonna make some changes as a result of that. So yeah. And to that point, there are some fuzzy areas there as well. We have this one area called explore, and it really is exploration. It's we want to do more in this area. No clue how, right? we want to work with partners. We feel like that's the direction, and we want to. It's almost like a startup in itself. We want to run some experiments to figure out what we need to do in these areas. And so we're always looking for opportunities to partner and to hear some feedback on some of those exploratory, opportunities that we have in the region for sure.
Yeah, not everything can be set in stone too, as we need to ebb and flow with our founders' needs as well. So we do need a little bit of that gray area, but definitely always open to the feedback. As hard as it is to digest sometimes, it's really important. And we really wanted to provide more clarity in this 3-year strategy. We really wanted to provide the community with more information and more detail, because that was one of the biggest elements of feedback we did get is, what are you doing? And COVID, as crappy as it was, that, some of the communications may have dwindled down. So we needed to be more upfront.
I'll give you a great example. One of the first pieces of feedback I got is, I thought you guys were all about the founder, and now you're saying it's about the ecosystem.
Right.
Well, that's really interesting, because it was clear in our mind that supporting the ecosystem was helping our founder. So we really need to do a better job at tying those together. Like, why is our mission associated with having a really world-class ecosystem here in the region across the province, and just being more articulate in that narrative?
And we're not doing it alone. Like, we're not building the ecosystem. We're helping. There's so many other partners in this community working together to move that forward. We're just one element of it. And we want everyone to move together and move forward. Yeah. And it's not about us either. That's the other thing. It's not about Communitech. It's about the entire ecosystem. It's about the founders. It's about the partners. It's about the companies here in the region. It's not about us at all.
No, when I started here as the brand manager 5 years ago, I was told never talk about Communitech and never toot our own horn.
Right.
And that's been ingrained in me a little bit, which is tough because I do like to toot our horn, but
we are pretty awesome, but at the same time, it's not about us.
I am hosting a podcast where I just talk about how great we are. So I think I failed, but I do think about that a lot. Like, try to be humble, I think is the vibe, and know that we've been here a long time.
Says it upstairs. Work hard, be humble.
Yeah. Who made that mural?
That was Bree Pointer.
Bree Pointer. Shout out local artist.
There we go.
Yeah. Rolodex.
I have a photo
Alex.
of that being done on the phone too. All right. Thank God it's not a video podcast. Rapid. Alison goes first. Rapid questions.
I want to ask the rapid fire questions. Alison and Joel.
That's right.
Rapid fire questions. Number 1, Allie, you go first. What's the last book you read?
Oh, the last book I read was Sir Middling You, which was written by our near and dear oldest, hence retired director of editorial, Kevin Crowley. And it was a great read, great book. So happy to support him on that one.
You're not allowed to say the same book.
No, that was the second last book I read, though. So,
okay.
Non-businessy book, because I read a lot of books. All the Light You Cannot See was just a wonderful book. And
it's a TV show.
But nothing like the book.
Okay.
The book was just inspiring. It was an amazing read. Yeah.
I haven't read that one, but I know it.
It's phenomenal.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
What was the last TV show you finished?
Ted Lasso. Loved it.
Oh, we were just talking about how good that is.
It was such a good, just little escape, feel good, entertaining, funny. Loved it.
I'm madly in love with Jason Sudeikis.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, he's great.
Same. Love.
Silo.
Oh.
I don't know that one.
Me neither.
Apple TV. Yeah.
That's a good show.
Not as good as the book as well.
See?
But yeah. But really
whatever is
well
better
done.
than the book.
Nothing is as good as the book.
No.
Favorite local restaurant can be Elmira, if you so choose.
Not gonna lie, there's not much out there. Bima's. Love Bima's. It's my most favorite restaurant in the region. It is just phenomenal. The staff are amazing. The food is incredible. Great drinks, and couldn't recommend it.
I haven't been to a lot of restaurants here. I kind of a low. I stick to kind of King Street because that's between here and my hotel for the most part. My favorite restaurant would be Soleil, and I heard that they just renovated, but I had never been there before prior to the renovation. But so I walked in, I was like, wow, this place is amazing. And the food was exquisite, and just the atmosphere was really amazing.
This is Charcoal Group bought them.
Yeah, they did.
Really? Yeah. I know where it is. It's in Waterloo.
Yeah. Do you know what the secret is go to Martini's and order off the charcoal menu.
Oh.
Alex has got the hacks.
I love it.
Well, thanks for joining us on our first episode.
Is there anything you feel like we missed talking about the 3-year strategy that you want to get off your chest?
No, you know what? I think it's a representation of who we are now. And guess what? Just like every product changes with iterations and feedback, we're still going to change. We've been around since 1997. And the key to longevity is adaptability and being able to say, hey, this is needed to change and we're going to change with it. But fundamentally, we're still here. We're still doing what our superpowers are, and we're still serving founders just like we always have. We're just doing it a little differently.
Thank you. Thanks, Ali and Joel, for joining us. This was great.
Thanks for having us.
Well, that was a great first episode, I think.
Yeah. Kudos to us, really.
For coming up with it? No. You know what? It's an interesting one because there's a lot of questions around what Communitech does in this kind of new era of work from home and remote and AI and all this other stuff. So I don't think, like we said before, this isn't set in stone. It's a kind of living, breathing thing. Like any organization adapts and kind of grows with it. And hopefully everyone's as open as Joel and Alison were to answering some questions.
Yeah, I think you asked some tough questions too. I think that was good.
Yeah, and it's not 60 minutes, but like it's...
No.
I wish.
This is also a great episode that I can send to my friends and family that might answer what I do for work, because I truly doubt that anyone knows.
Well, we'll be back every couple weeks going on starting this June with new episodes. Visit communitech.ca to learn more about Communitech and its programs and services.
Or hit us up on socials at Communitech. It's where you can find us.
On pretty much everything.
Yep.
Even No, not Threads.
No, not Threads. But Instagram.
Twitter. Instagram and LinkedIn.
Twitter X.
Whatever.
We're on there.
I don't go on that one.
Yeah. You've moved on.
I'm done. But thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Tech About Town, brought to you by Communitech. Tech About Town is recorded in the Communitech Hub in beautiful downtown Kitchener, Ontario, Canada.